Welcome everyone to our webinar today. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. So just relax for a little bit and we'll be with you in just a moment. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started today. Good to see everyone here today. For those that may not know me, my name is Michael Ibrahim, Program Manager with the Cultural Investment Portfolio here at the Mass Cultural Council. We're super excited to bring our team back, Sarah Stackhouse and Justin Lehue of Broadband Collaborative. We are talking all about digital fundraising during COVID-19 and beyond. This workshop is part of the Mass Cultural Council's Recover, Rebuild, and Renew efforts to help organizations come back from COVID-19. If you've been following along, you probably know every week we've been offering 2 free workshops in the areas of financial management, legal issues, human resources, advocacy, board governance, and management. While we're going to get started in just a minute, just a few ground rules, and then I'll turn it right over to Sarah and Justin. Feel free to say hi in the chat. You can enter your organization name, your title, pronouns, anything that you want to share with us, just so we can all kind of say hi to one another. This session does have automatic captioning. Auto-generated captions are provided on all Mass Cultural Council Zoom meetings and webinars. If you need additional accommodations to ensure your participation at a future Mass Cultural Council webinar or a meeting, just let us know when you register and we'd be happy to do that. As you can probably tell, today's session is being recorded and will be available after this session today, probably tomorrow. Will be on the Mass Cultural Council's YouTube channel. You will get an email from me when that recording is available. So we'd love for you to share it with whomever you come in contact with that you really believe needs to take a look at this. Our session today runs for about an hour and a half. We may be a little less depending on where we end up today, but that's a good place to start. And with that in mind, I'd love to turn it over to the wonderful minds of Sarah and Justin.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. And Justin is doing the behind the scenes piece today. So I'm just going to give him a shout out right now. But when you see PowerPoint or you see videos, that is Justin. So hi, everyone. This is I've done 3 of these during this COVID time, and this is the first one I've done completely by myself. So please chat with me in the chat. If we could have this be a meeting and turn cameras on, that would even be better, but we cannot because it's a webinar. So I'm just excited to share some thoughts and ideas and examples and things with you today and then hear from you. I did talk with Michael also as the weather has gotten nicer and things have opened up. There have been smaller groups on these. And so, we may make it a little shorter. Let's see how it goes. I love fundraising. And I know a lot of people don't. And I'm not a trained development professional. It's not like I've run a big development a department or anything like that, but I have been raising money for arts and artists and nonprofits for a long time. And it's partly because the way I think about it, all you're doing when you're fundraising is giving somebody an opportunity to make something happen in the world. And And when you do that and they say yes and you say yes, really amazing things happen. And so for me, I'm always looking for that moment. It's sort of like having an audience. What are they interested in? What are they going to respond to? Give them an opportunity and maybe they say yes. So I've really enjoyed that over the years. I've taught a lot of fundraising and my students are always like, where do we start? You know, who are these magical people who give money to things? So I wanted to talk a little bit about fundraising, but in a time of crisis, in a time of churn, in a time of change, and also now in a time of reemergence where some things are changing back and some things are innovating forward into a new normal. So these are the things I'm hoping we're going to cover today. Yeah, Justin, give me the first bullet there. Oh, we may be having a, there it is. The first thing is why people give money to things. And I want to say that if you're a really senior or established development person, you're going to know all of this. And if you have other thoughts, put them in the chat and we'll share them. But there are also some people on the list who I think are newer to fundraising or who just don't feel comfortable with technology. So these are some thoughts and of the things we'll cover today. So why do people give money to things, to artists and to nonprofits? Why? Why do they do it? Because if you don't understand that, you have no place to start. Number two, how fundraising changes during a crisis. I have a couple thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Number three, how to evolve your response and your messaging, especially during a time of change like this and a time of multiple crises. And number four is, sorry, Justin's a second behind me, some strategies and some tools. And I'd love to know what you've used. And then finally, you know, what have we learned? What's here to stay? I think there's a lot about virtual fundraising that was happening before the pandemic. And now that we were isolated from each other, it like ramped up and all this new innovation happened, new experiments, ways to connect, success stories, some failures, but a lot of learning. And I think some of it's here to stay. So this is what we're going to do for the next hour plus, and let's do it. So the first thing I want to talk about is why people give money to things and to artists and nonprofits. And I want to take out the obvious answer, which is because they get a tax write-off, right? Or because it helps them financially. Let's assume that somebody does want to do it for those reasons and they have this bunch of money. Why do they give it to you? Why do they give it to arts? Why do they give it to a nonprofit? What are the reasons? And I have a theory about it, and I've been testing it, and I cannot find more reasons than the four I'm about to talk about. If you can think of a fifth, please put it in the chat and let's talk about it. But the first reason I think has to do with identity and belonging and legacy. And these are the kinds of things like, I want to be associated with the green movement. So I'm going to give money to Greenpeace or to a local farm or something like that. But I'm not just going to give money. I'm going to get the t-shirt because I want everyone to know that's part of who I am. Or belonging, you know, all of your friends do something together, or you feel a sense of shared values with an organization or the work of an artist, and you want to be part of that group. You might want to give money. You might also want to go to opening night and be at the party. You might also want your friends to know that you're on that board. And that's about your self-identity. And another way this plays out is through legacy, right? So people want to name buildings after their grandfather, or they want to do something in memory of someone. And all of those have to do with a sense of, this is who I am. And being connected with you, your artwork, or your organization tells the world something about me. And so I really believe if you think about what is it that your donors care about, you can figure out what to ask them and how to ask them. All right, the second thing I think, which is an obvious one, especially to most of us in the nonprofit world, people give money to things because the organization or artists doing the work is part of a strategy for change. So if you think about something like the Barr Foundation, whose primary program areas are in climate, education, and arts, they have a vision for what they want the world to look like. They want it to be more equitable. They want it to be ecologically stronger, and they want people to be educated and for us to thrive. And so if my artwork or my organization is doing something that will help with those things, then I can be part of their strategy. And if I'm not, I'm probably not going to get funded by them. And I think this works for individuals as well. Now, again, many of you know all of this, but it's good to name it because it helps us think about what to do during a time of crisis with these things. So number one, gives you a sense of identity and belonging. Number two, you're part of somebody else's strategy for change. Number three, I learned from Abe Rybeck, although I think I sort of knew it already. Abe Rybeck, who was the founder of the Theater Offensive and True Colors. And this is that people give money because they're moved by something. And I've talked about this before, but I think sometimes if you make really good art or you make a really good product, you think people are going to fund it. But if you do some experiments, such as you go out before a play and you ask for money, or you go out after an incredibly emotional performance and you have the lead actor ask for money, you're going to have a different response after than before. Even if the person watching is like, I love this theater, of course I'll support them. It changes when you're emotionally moved or stirred by something. And this is why we have Save the Children ads after 10 p.m. Because you're tired and you're let down and something moves you on television and you pick up the phone and call. It's why telethons are not just message driven. They have artists because they make you feel something and they tell stories. It's why people serve alcohol at galas because it makes people looser and more emotional, and then they give more money. So I think, thinking about these three is really important. When you're talking to a donor, what's the thing that's driving them? Sometimes it's all of them, but sometimes it's really one. Like they really, really want their neighborhood to be cleaned up in terms of invasive plants. That's the change they want to see. Then that's the strategy. If what they really want is to be part of something, that's a different strategy. And moving people is a third. And then my final reason, because somebody asks you. You have to ask. And also, usually people give because someone asks them. Even major donors, it's like they have to be asked and they wait to be asked, or sometimes it surprises them, that they're being asked. And it's often because it's Nana. You ask Nana, or you ask your friends, or you ask your circle or your colleagues. You may not actually care about the Girl Scouts, but you will buy cookies. Maybe because of the cookies, but you might also donate. So I think these four things are the things I've always worked with when I'm thinking about why do people give money to things and to arts organizations. And can anybody think of a fifth one? If there are other reasons, I'm just going to look at the chat and see if we have any feedback, and please talk to me because I'm on here by myself. So looking at these four things, I started thinking about what happens during a crisis. What happens during a time of change? How do these things play out differently? And so I just want to stay on this slide for a second and think about that. And maybe you can put some examples in the chat. Things that during a crisis, so whether it's the racial crisis in this country, whether it's been the environmental crisis, or whether it's the COVID crisis or the economic crisis, what are some things that people have given money to because it gives them a sense of identity or a sense of belonging or being associated with something? And I can give an example. When George Floyd was murdered, I really wanted to show solidarity, and I really wanted to change something, and I really wanted to be part of something. And I gave to all kinds of causes. Now, that might be number two a little bit, strategy for change, but it was also number one because we were all doing it together. We were all sort of saying we need to make this change together. If anybody has another example, put it in the chat. Museum Workers Relief Fund, mutual aid. So that might be something where, I don't know why people are giving to that, but it might be that either you want to show solidarity to that, or you're one of those workers, or your family is one of those workers, and you just want to make sure that you're part of it. I often think about this the way when people, like when somebody is sick or they're dying and they ask for support. And of course you give, but you also, often people don't do it anonymously. Occasionally someone does, but most people want their name on there because they want to be part of that healing group. Michael has something here. It could be a mix of 1 and 3. The repayer, someone who benefited from an organization at a point in their life and then later was able to pay it back. So these are great examples. Racist, the Theater Community Benevolent Fund, all of these are things that maybe connect to your identity and belonging. During COVID, strategy for change became different for a little bit. At least I experienced it that way. A lot of the big strategies for change that were being funded are long game, right? Environmental causes, eradicating malaria, right? But during a crisis, there's an immediate thing like, we need to change this COVID situation. We need to fix this. How are we going to do it? Who do we give to? Do we give to research? Do we give to the frontline workers? So a lot of effort went to the frontline workers. You know, do we do something around the election because things have to change and it's an emergency now? And so I think one of the things the arts organizations had to figure out during this time is like, how do we keep going with a strategy for change that has to do with helping young people to figure out their voice, or, you know, creating new beautiful concerts for people when that kind of emergency is happening. And I think there is a way to do it. I think that those things do matter. And I'm going to talk about some strategies, but it does change during a time of crisis. Being moved emotionally also changed. I think all of us were very in turmoil emotionally over the past year, and trying to figure out what to respond to, what to stir up in people through your fundraising, how to activate people's feelings and get them to support you, and when to do that. So it really is a different kind of time. And then the ask, I mean, I work for a bunch of organizations through broadband, and some of them stepped back from asking. Some of them leaned in to asking. Some of them went right back to their regular donors, and some didn't want to tax their regular donors. So I think it is a good time to be talking about fundraising, virtual or not, because it's been a really different kind of time. Let's go to the next slide, Justin. You all know this, but I just want to name it. There are many ways to get money, but the four big ones that I'm talking about are the ones that I think arts and arts organizations are really looking to right now. And that's individuals, it's foundations, it's government, and it's business or corporate. Those are the usual suspects. And so just thinking about, why do people give money and who gives money and how do we think about that virtually? All right, let's go to the next slide. So part of what I think is important when in terms of virtual fundraising during a time of crisis, and now as we are still in crisis, but sort of emerging out, is the evolving messaging of it. And a lot of this happened on social media or through email blasts or one-on-one with donors because we couldn't gather and you didn't have curtain speeches. But one of the things I think is really important, and is important right today in this moment, is to pause and scan the environment. So what is happening? What are people caring about? What's the temperature? And then to do a deep internal dive. And that internal dive is, what's our role to play right now? It might be a moment to step back. It might be a moment to step forward. We might be a steadying force. We might be an innovative force. And actually taking temperature of what you have to offer and what the right timing is, and then evolving your messaging. So if you are thinking, oh my gosh, we always raise this with our spring campaign and we always do a summer event, you know, maybe you and your board and your staff and artists, whoever, can sit down and actually think about, let's scan the horizon and figure out what's happening with funders, what's happening with our spaces, what's happening with the emotional temperature. And then what is the moment for you, and maybe make some adjustments. These are some of the messages I watched roll out over the last 18 months, 16 months, wherever we are in crisis. And I tied them to those reasons for giving that I had mentioned. And I think they're worth considering. Is this a moment for you to say, hey, everyone, we're with you. We're here for you. We're stabilizing. You're part of us. That's a moment of connecting to that identity and belonging idea with donors and with patrons. Another mode a lot of people kicked into was, we're really in trouble. We really need you. Can you help us? It's time sensitive. It has a sense of urgency. and you move people. You stir them up and they do something for you. You can do that once or twice. If you're going to move people again, you might want to move them in a different way. So that's like, there's a woman I met once when I had little kids and she had teenagers. And she said, when you have a teenager, you only get 3 elephant bullets, like 3 big moments where you get to sort of like bring down the hammer. And she said, you know, don't use them up too soon. So I think that emergency mode is something to think about. You can do it. How often do you do it? A third message is, and I watch the theater community do this like crazy. We are leading and responding by Central Square Theater, creating the Starlight space. We are leading and responding by paying all of our artists for the next month. So there was a lot of like, here's the way in which we're stepping in and we want to be seen. And that's a strategy for change. If we don't do this, everyone's going to be in crisis and have no money or have nowhere to perform. We want to see this continue. So here's what we're doing. And you position yourself as a leader. But the other thing that's been really beautiful this year has been the moments when people stepped back. Like, you know, as white theater leaders, we're going to take a back seat for a minute and we support whatever it is, Front Porch Collective or Company One or whoever's doing the work, and we stand behind them. That's a way of positioning yourself, but actually allowing funds to go somewhere else or raising funds for someone else. Like our conservatory is raising money for masks, right? Things like that. So I think those are 2 very different strategies. And these are just important things to think about during times of churn, especially if you're circling up with your team. There was also an interesting mix of messages, which was the like, we're here to stay. Our work matters. We're going to keep going. The world without art. What is it? Earth without art is just you know, it's like that message. So we're here to stay. Our work matters. Keep funding us. There was a study after 9/11, actually, of nonprofits, especially New York nonprofits, where a bunch of them didn't fundraise and others leaned right in and said, actually, our work that connects people matters now more than ever. And the ones that leaned in did better and survived at a higher rate. So there is something about saying, hey, art always matters. Our young people always matter. Creative youth development always matters. And we're here to stay and staying on it. There's also been a big role for us to play around joy and escape and experiences. I'm wondering too, from you all, like, of the things that happened in the past year, do you have art experiences that really provided joy, escape, lift, upliftment? You know, I remember right at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of excitement about the Sondheim celebration, which started 90 minutes late or something because of tech. But that was something where like people came together and did something that lifted them up. So if you have any thoughts about that, put them in the chat. But we've had a role to play there. Art does that. Maybe some of you saw the Keep Moving On song. We're gonna keep moving, keep going, keep going, keep going on. That song did lift so much upliftment for us, right? And like hope that came through that. And then the other 2 messages we're seeing more of now are, hey, we are innovating, we're changing, we've created something new, we're starting a new initiative, we've created a new form of theater, we're starting a new program, and that's been energizing, and it helps people imagine a future. So some of this may be obvious, but I thought it was helpful because I do think when you're thinking about virtual fundraising, part of what you have to figure out is, why will people give money to you? Is it for change? Is it for belonging? Is it because they're moved by something? And what's the message that's right for that moment for your organization in this time? So I think that that's kind of good sort of work whenever you're doing fundraising, but especially now. All right, let's go to the next slide, Justin. So these are 5 strategies for virtual fundraising. I have done all of them this year for different clients. And with differing results, but raising money through all of them. And some of them were hard and some of them were easy. And so I want to kind of go through these different strategies and tools and think about how you can do it. I think a lot of this is going to continue to be relevant. It doesn't matter that some things are opening up. There's also some benefits to doing stuff online. There's some benefits to doing things hybrid. And there's a way you could mix the two up over time so you don't get donor fatigue because you're doing different kinds of things. So let's talk these through. Let's talk about events. Go to that next slide. So one of my clients is Children's Hope India. It's an organization that funds schools, medical work, mental health support, arts in India, across India, but it's based in New York, and New York is the kind of fundraising hub for it. And it's primarily run by this powerful group of women who sat around a kitchen table and made this organization 25 years ago. And they are socialites, and or some of them are doctors, and they're very connected and they're very generous. But basically everything they've done has been live events. I mean, really, like galas, women's luncheons, fashion things, and they've raised a lot of money. And during the pandemic, they had to keep raising that money. Think about what's happening in India right now. Like, they needed the support, but they had to figure out how to do it differently. And so I've produced 3 events for them this year, 2 luncheons and 1 gala, and all of them were online and all of them were on YouTube. The first 2 were on Facebook also, but YouTube, all of them were on YouTube. And what's interesting about this is that they were all pre-recorded and pre-edited, but we created a sense of live. And that's one of the things that I think really matters when you're doing virtual theater, that you're not competing with a video that's just circulating or Netflix, but that there's a sense of event still. Have any of you gone to really good virtual events this year where there was a sense of event and you felt like part of something? Because what I realized doing these events for Children's Hope India was how much it wasn't just the donors that needed to feel excited. It was the fundraisers. It was all those women who spent their lives putting these events on. They want to be together. They want to gather. They want to chat during the event. They want to get their friends to be involved. So we didn't just have to make a nice video. We had to figure out how to recreate that feeling through a series of things, a lot of which we did before the event. People took pictures of what they were wearing and posted them. People had watch parties. People were getting a whole circle of friends to all donate together, and then we would put it on social. And so that is actually, I think, a key element of virtual events. And the other is to just have them be super energetic and fun and not too long. So the thing that's really worked this year for most people that I've watched a lot of fundraisers is sort of 45 minutes is a good amount of time. People really don't want to sit in front of Zoom for 2 hours watching a fundraiser. That's been my experience. And if any of you have seen one that's longer, I'd love to know. But so this has been an interesting experience. Justin, why don't we show a clip from the last Children's Hope India video? And what I did here is I was thinking about how they could share their mission without really having a room full of people to tell stories to. So we worked with an artist, Falu Shah, who's a wonderful Indian artist in New York. And she had a Grammy nomination for a children's album called Falu's Bazaar. And Falu, we gave her an award. And then she let us use her music. And we took 21 mission accomplishments for 2021 and one of her songs and made a really fun, inspiring, short video, but it kind of told the story of what was happening at Children's Hope India over the last year. So let's watch that.
Hey hori khele Raghubira Awadh mein hori khele Raghubira
Hori khele Raghubira Awadh mein hori khele Raghubira
Hori khele Raghubira Awadh mein hori khele Raghubira. Hey.
The thing I learned last year was there is no difference between all of us. In this pandemic situation, all of us facing a critical time.
My message is education is the most powerful weapon, so by using it, we have to pass the exam and win in our life.
लक्ष्मण के हाथे अबीरा अवध में होरी खेले रघुबीरा.
So the women down. The gender discrimination is more. So, but only we can change our fate. We can change the situation of our family. So everything is in our hands. So education is the only tool. So we have to take care. We have to work hard, read well. Let it be any student. So then everything will change.
के हाथे अबीरा अवध में होरी खेले रघुबीरा
होरी खेले रघुबीरा अवध में होरी खेले रघुबीरा।
मैंने कोर्स करने के टाइम पे ये चीज़ जानी कि कोई भी कोर्स आप करो तो मन लगा के करना चाहिए और इससे आपकी कामयाबी होगी। मुझे आज इस चीज़ की खुशी है कि मैं अपने पैरों पे खड़ी हूँ और अपनी फैमिली के साथ, अपने हस्बैंड के साथ उनकी पूरी सपोर्ट में हूँ और मैं अपने घर किराए सब मैं करती हूँ। मुझे बहुत खुशी मिलती है कि अपने हस्बैंड के साथ मैं खड़ी हूँ।
ये बदलाव आया है कि मैं पहले बहुत डरती थी, हर किसी से मतलब बात करने में डरती थी, किसी काम को करने में डरती थी, पर अब मेरी पर्सनैलिटी में डेवलपमेंट आया है और मैं बिल्कुल नहीं डरती हूँ। हर किसी से आराम से बात कर सकती हूँ और कोई भी काम आराम से कर लेती हूँ।
रामा के हाथे डफ सोहत है
और लक्ष्मण के हाथे मजीरा अवध में होरी खेले रघुबीरा। होरी खेले रघुबीरा अवध में होरी खेले रघुबीरा। होरी खेले रघुबीरा अवध में होरी खेले रघुबीरा।
मेरा नाम अलीमा है। मार्क्स बनाने भी आते मुझे, मार्क्स बनाने सीख गई हूँ और मार्क्स बना के देती भी हूँ। यहाँ पे योगा भी होता है, पीटी भी। थैंक यू चिल्ड्रंस ऑफ इंडिया।
पाग भींजत है,
किकरा लटपट पाग भींजत है,
किकरा भींजत चीरा अवध में होरी खेले रघुबीरा।
You fail also, you keep trying and never stop.
The message I want to give to girls is concentrate more on your studies, work hard.
Be safe and be happy with your family and friends. Be happy always. Okay. Thank you so much.
होरी खेले रघुबीरा। होरी खेले रघुबीरा अवध में होरी खेले रघुबीरा। होरी खेले रघुबीरा अवध में होरी खेले रघुबीरा। अवध में होरी खेले रघुबीरा। अवध में होरी खेले रघुबीरा। अवध में होरी खेले रघुबीरा।
Aren't they the cutest? So I shared that video because that's not high production values. That was not that hard to make, right? That was something that I could do pretty easily. I had weird video from people's phones in India. Some of them were horizontal, some of them were vertical. We had some in Hindu, we had some in English, Hindi, some in English. And we had a bunch of photos. Some of them were really high res, some weren't. But we were able to say, look, like we're just trying to show our work on the ground. And so you can go into Canva and make some stat slides and pull in some beautiful photos and make something. And this event, which had a bunch of segments kind of like that and some awards that were given to these different high profile people. I think it was a 45-minute video that ran on YouTube and we made like $70,000. And what's exciting about this too is there's a bunch of things that we do in real life, like you try to secure a big guest to come. They have to travel. Maybe you need a headliner. Maybe they need a band. Maybe they need a hotel room, like all the costs that normally go on. We were able to do quite a few things. We had A.R. Rahman, who did one of our events. You know, he's probably the biggest star in India. He made us a 1-minute thank you video that was personal. And then he shared one of his videos with us. and we gave him an award. But then what happened is he posted on social for us, and then a bunch of people came, and then his circle spread it around. And we did the same thing with a chef, and we did the same thing with somebody from, you know, business. And so those are things we do live, but virtual, you can do it without travel. You can do it without a band. You can put it together and it still feels fairly personal if you watch a video and then they come talk to you for a minute. So some of the cost savings were really big, but also the ability to bring together a whole group of celebrities or leaders that you normally couldn't get in the same room to be part of the same event. I don't think we should let go of that. And you don't have to have, you know, a 6-person team to do it. I, you know, learned how to edit this past year. I'm not a professional editor, but I'm pretty good. And I can make, I'm not a designer, but I can make basic things on Canva, and you can put things together that really have impact. After this gala was over, they asked me to excerpt this piece because now they're using it for other things. So it's just a good example of a way to do virtual events. And I think the other thing which I said at the beginning, but I'll say again, is a sense of event creates event. So you can make the most beautiful video in the world and put it out, but the idea that everyone's going to watch it at the same time, and you can see them in the waiting room, and people are chatting in the chat, and you have a text chain going with all of the artists and everyone's, it has that event feel to it. And I think we should keep going with that. So I'm going to ask if any of you have have been to any really good virtual events. Please put something in the chat if you have. I want to mention one that I went to that I wasn't involved in, but I supported, which was Shakespeare and Company. And one of the things that worked about theirs is in terms of sense of belonging, which is one of the things we say is the reason people give money. So many people have trained there. So many people have acted there. So many people have visited there. And there's a deep sense of place, like going to the Berkshires, being in those buildings, being on the grounds, that makes people feel like they're part of something that matters. And we couldn't do that. So they got a really skilled cinematographer to come, and they did all this beautiful filming of the grounds, of the theaters, of things happening there. So you felt like you were there and everybody gathered. And they tapped into that sense of belonging that way. Let's see. We have, yeah, so Heather says, we've had political officials who couldn't attend our fundraisers, but they do live and taped greetings at in-person events. Yeah, if you can do it at in-person events, you can do it in virtual events, and you can actually get more people because they just have to tape it and you edit it together the way you want it to be. So that was just an example of virtual events and a couple of strategies around it that I think is helpful. The only other thing I wanted to say is there has been a big debate this year about do you charge for tickets to virtual events or do you make them free? And I have seen both things happen, but because people are so yearning for a sense of gathering and belonging and event, the thing I've seen the most and the thing that's worked the best with the projects I've been involved with is to get a lot of fundraising done ahead of time through circles of donors, through crowdfunding, however you're going to do it, and then make it free and spread the word. And then suddenly you're part of this happening with lots and lots of people. So that's something to consider. Justin, let's go to the next thing. I think a lot of you have done this year. But campaigns of different kinds digitally. So the first digital campaign I ever did was when I was the ED of Actor Shakespeare Project. This was maybe 2012, 13, and it was the 10th anniversary. And we spent, this was a newer thing to do, digital fundraising, but we decided to see if we could get 1,000 people to give $10 on April 10th. For the 10th anniversary. And we made great graphics, and we had, you know, we had a whole social media calendar. But the main thing we did is we lined up all the artists in the company, all the staff, all the board, all the advisory members. And then we asked 10 people to be super volunteers, people who were like big fans, big supporters. And every one of them agreed to ask 10 people. And so I think there's something about the digital, which is about concentric circles. You put something on Facebook and then people share it and they share it. But there's also something about concentric circles of people that you tee up. And so in the same way that when you do a gala, you have to sell the tables, this is a way to do a digital campaign where you don't put all of your energy into beautiful graphics and sending stuff out. You put a lot of your energy into lining up the people who are going to give. I would call my board and say, I know you already gave. Can you just give something small in the first 3 hours of the day? So by noon, we have full board participation. And can you each ask 10 people to give? And that 10 for 10, which Mariana Basham called Lend Me a Tenner. It took us 2 days, but we did it. And so this year during COVID, I think a lot of people moved to this kind of fundraising, and I saw a lot of things come across the social, but I think the things that succeeded were the ones that actually had a bunch of people connected to them. So this is a quick one. You can see that even my graphics aren't even perfect because I had to make it so fast. But this is also Children's Hope India doing some COVID emergency relief. Let's go to the next one. I run a project in South Africa called the Mama Project, where normally it's an arts project. I bring a team of women from the States, and we work with a team of women from township communities creating understanding and art together. But we haven't been together now for almost 2 years because of COVID, because we usually go in the summer. And so this year we pivoted to how do we stay connected? How do we still understand each other across the sea? This is Tuma. We did a thing where we all made signs of how we were still connected. But we also moved to relief efforts. And again, I'm showing something that's very low budget, very homemade, but it totally worked, which is that they said they needed food relief and they needed heart and soul relief. So we did a holiday campaign, which was just to raise $5,000 to send groceries to like 60 families and to send art supplies and to send toys for the kids. And we did that very one-on-one. We wrote to all of our former donors. We asked all of the volunteers who'd gone to share it with their circles. We put it on social, we sent emails, and we were able to raise that money. And I think on a Sunday morning in about half an hour, I made a video to thank people. And it's another example of not high production values, but like big heart. And so sense of belonging, sense of being moved. And this was our little thank you video, which I think is a bit of a low res copy, but let's watch it. Here comes Justin lining it up. So we put this out when we hit our goal and sent it to people as an email. But there was no phone calls. There was no personal anything. And we hit our goal. We don't seem to have video. There it is.
And thank you, Auntie Heather. And thank you, Big Mama. And we love you. And thank you.
Okay, so obviously very handmade, but tells a whole story. And the whole fundraiser was done that way in a couple of weeks. And so I think understanding what is it that people give money to, and what is this part of their strategy for helping with relief efforts? Is this part of their strategy for feeling like they're a part of something? Is this a strategy to move somebody? And we had a bunch of those things going. And it's a small project, but I love sharing it because it made a huge difference in people's lives. And it was different than what we were doing before the pandemic. So that's an example of a campaign as well. Let's go to the next thing, Justin. So we talked about events, we've talked about campaigns. So I wanted to talk a little bit about giving circles, and I touched on it already, super volunteers, giving circles, but this is the piece that where people say, I don't really like fundraising. So I'm happy to be on your board, but I don't like fundraising, or I'm one of your artists, but I don't like fundraising. Yeah, not everybody has to do it, and it's not the right thing to ask everybody. But I also think there's a way for people to find their way of fundraising that can help you. I was at a party once presenting something, and there was a wealthy gentleman there. I could tell he was wealthy because of his shoes. Because I couldn't afford like Razor's Edge, so I just looked at people's shoes. And he was watching what we were doing, and at the end of the night, he came up and he said, you know, I think you shouldn't be afraid to ask people for money. You're not asking them to give you a bicycle or a personal gift. You're asking them to help you make something happen in this world, something moving, something that they can belong to, something that creates change. And you're giving them that opportunity, and then they can say yes. And I said, I thank you so much, and I'd like a gift from you, please. And he laughed, and then he gave me a gift. But I learned so much in that conversation. And so one of the things that I do with circles of people, volunteers, board members, artists, staff members, is a treasure map. And I actually learned this from Lori Rudder at Advisa Consulting. She's the one who worked on this with me. But it's like you can look at all of the ways that somebody could invite somebody to connect to your organization and give money. They can invite them to come watch an event with you online, and you text the whole time. You can ask them to match something that you're doing. You can invite them to subscribe with you to something happening online. You can ask if their family would like to do something. So I think thinking of like just individual ways to pull people in. And one of the events that I worked on this year with Justin, Broadband, it was with Beyond Classical Theater. Beyond Classical Theater was founded in the memory of Johnny Lee Davenport. Many of you may know Johnny Lee Davenport. He was a very powerful actor of color, and he was also a very beautiful human being. And he died from leukemia about almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, maybe. And the anniversary was February. So his wife, Kelly, started an organization in his name to create scholarships for young actors of color to get classical training. And they were ready to launch this organization Beyond Classical Theater, and COVID hit. And so they were like, okay, what do we do? And they decided on the anniversary of his death to do this, this fundraiser, which we at Broadband co-produced with them and edited and supported. But the way we did this was to do circles. And so I want to talk about that as a strategy. Johnny had worked for almost every theater in town. So we asked every theater in town if they would cross stream this event. That means on Facebook, when it played on Beyond Classical Theater's page, it also played on everybody else's page. We also asked some of the theaters from out of state where he had worked if they would cross promote. So suddenly you have a whole, new audience of people in other places. We asked people to spread the word amongst all the artists who had worked with him, and for them to come all and watch it live together when it streamed. And we created a huge Facebook chat that was super active. You can't see all of it here, but you can see that it's got watched 10,000 times. And there were 122 comments during the show. So it was super active. And all of the young actors and friends of Johnny's who were part of making it or who were in it got on a text chain together. So it was like being backstage. And that event not only raised money for actors of color to get classical training and honored Johnny. But it also was this like great theater happening in Boston because all the theater companies were there together and you could see them all, people commenting. And we had been so apart. And so part of the reason we gave is because we were just there and it was such a great experience and everybody threw in something. And, you know, I think they raised over $15,000. That kind of happening is another example of a way to get people to give. And it worked digitally in a way I don't think it could have worked live. Those people from out of state couldn't have been there. All of those artists probably wouldn't have been free for the whole evening, but it was like a 40-minute event. So I want to just show a little piece of this. And this is a piece that we really thought about what this event was about. And it was about Johnny and about acting and about young people and about legacy and relationship. And so at the end, we had a little segment where people did some tributes to him and we saw a lot of dollars come in. So Justin's going to share that clip.
Johnny Lee, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for being the example. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for expecting more of all of us. I love you.
Thank you.
No man must know what follows. The numbers altered. No man must know if this should be the Malvolio.
Johnny, you were the first person I met in Boston who reminded me of the South, of home. Your warmth, humor, confidence, and gregarious personality, on stage and off, was a huge inspiration to me. And although I knew it, seeing you on stage made me believe that classical theater belonged to me. Your light and power lives on and continues to inspire us. We love you and are so thankful for the gift of you to this world, especially the theater world.
Knock, knock, knock!
There's Johnny in the Scottish play. So, you know, and again, a lot of the examples I'm giving are not high art, but they did their job and kept people connected and kept them giving. All right, let's go to the next slide here. So that's sort of a giving circle idea. And then there's crowdfunding. And have any of you done a successful crowdfunding for your theaters or your concert halls or your organizations? I work with Arlekin Players Theater, which is a Russian immigrant theater in Needham. And one of the things that they did, and you know, at the beginning when I was talking about the different messaging that you have at different times. So through these, you should see, you know, some of them is, we're still here, we matter. That's what Children's Hope India was. Relief efforts, you know, we're here to help. We're going to follow the lead of what people on the ground are telling us. That's what Mama Project was. Johnny Lee Davenport was really about, you know, let's gather, let's feel something. But Arlekin has been saying, this is a new day. This is a new moment. Technology is different. Our ability to be together is different. We are going to make something new. And so during the pandemic, what they did is they converted their black box into a green screen space, hacked together 8 pieces of software, created a virtual theater piece that went viral. Tiny theater company in Needham. New York Times came. The New York Times would never come to see Arlekin in Needham before that, but because of COVID, it was virtual. They were able to come. Their shows were free, but they did a tip jar. And so they actually were able to recoup a lot of the money that they were going to end in the red, but because of that tip jar and the donations that came in through this experiment, through this new idea, through trying something bold and artistic during this time, it energized people. So that was really amazing. And when they built their green screen space, they named it Zero Gravity. And they did a Kickstarter and we're like, we need $35,000 worth of equipment. We're going to pioneer virtual theater. We have a New York Times piece. We're going for it. And so, yeah, so here's their Kickstarter. I think they got some private donations in for the first piece. And then they did a whole virtual pitch using Kickstarter, using emails, using social, and also making some videos to show the work. So Justin, I think I have an example of a Arlequin video that's part of their campaign. And what's great about this one is it's actually just, it was a holiday video, it was like Happy Holidays, but they were showing what was possible in their new space. And it was so exciting to people and they were so intrigued that it actually helped raise the money.
We had a little accident and happy holidays.
So what I love about that is that he doesn't ask for money. And they attached it, I think, to some videos, but what they were showing was what was new that was happening and what was possible and what was exciting. And that is a thing we're in. That's the moment we're in right now. Things are opening. So what are we going to imagine? What are we imagining and how are we helping people not just say, I wanted to get back, but like, what is the role of your arts organization, your project, your camp, your classes, whatever, that's actually going to help us imagine something new. And they made it and it was artistic. And that's the thing that got people's attention. And so they were able to raise the money. And I'm just giving all of these examples because I think sitting down and thinking through what's going on in the world, what are our values and what is our purpose, which messaging should we be working with right now, who gives money and why do they give, helps you come up with these creative ways to use YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Canva, email, social media, and things like TikTok, to create something and get dollars in the door, which you need. So I hope it's helpful. Let's go to the next thing. I think I have one more, which is about proposals. And this is, where we all live, writing proposals, making pitches, talking to donors, writing to foundations. My experience has been that foundations in this time have done one of two things. They've either said, we're doubling down on our existing grantees. We're not going to let them fail. We're going to support them, which is amazing. But it also means there's not a lot of space for new things. Or they've said the most important thing in this moment is either emergency relief or as BIPOC-led arts organizations. About time, right? So that's incredibly important and incredibly exciting. And it also means it's hard to know how to approach foundations right now. You may be the perfect organization to approach a foundation for one of those many reasons. You may not. And so how do you make a proposal and figure out where to put your energy? given A, that what you're presenting might be virtual, and B, the way you're reaching out to them, you may send them a proposal, but it may connect to a video or to some kind of materials that are virtual. And how do you do it? So one of the things I think we've had to do is step back. It is time for some other folks to get funded sometimes, and that is important to honor. But you can't let your organization fail, and you have work you need to do. So then I think it's a question of thinking outside the box during times of crisis about how do you make art and teach, and how do you fundraise when that's the conditions. So I have two examples here of things that they're small, but they worked, and I wanted to share them because I learned a lot. I tried a lot of things that didn't work. These worked. So one of the things that Justin and I did with our colleague Kristen Canterbury Bagnall and a group of 8 artists is we created an online series called Latitudes. And it was about reorienting during this time and taking latitude on the map, but also the space to figure out, what do we have to say as artists? How do we connect with audiences? Will people pay for it? And we did a series, a subscription series. We just made it up and sold it, and we had a bunch of subscribers. And we were thinking about who would sponsor it? Who would sponsor that in this moment? And a lot of the major foundations and sponsors were not able to. They were doubling down on existing grantees, or they had a very specific focus. So we thought creatively about this one. This artist is Guy Mendelow, who's a composer, storyteller, musician, runs the Guy Mendelow Ensemble. And he's also a young audiences artist. And I had a contact who was a former board member somewhere else, who loves music, who loves marketing, and who's involved with young audiences. And I thought, maybe she would sponsor something if I brought it to her the right way. And we ended up putting together this unusual proposal, which was basically that she would give funds to both young audiences and broadband, that we would cross promote. Guy is an artist for both of us. We would maybe start something new at young audiences together, and then we would have some financial support for this, this virtual event, and we got the gift. And Guy made a really sweet, 1-minute promo for us, which we'll show Justin, where we were able to honor all of those donors and also show the virtual work and use it to promote the show. So I just wanted to show that piece. He's coming.
Join us for Via Airmail, an evening of stories told through sound, music, and the spoken word, bringing to life a travelogue through a multi-ethnic Mediterranean world in the final days of the Ottoman Empire and the upheavals of the early 20th century. The fascinating history is unpacked by Dr. Devin Nair, the Isaac Al-Hadith Professor in Sephardic Studies at the University of Washington. The evening features music and stories from the Guy Mendelow Ensemble, animated in sand by Xenia Simonova, and includes the premiere of an entirely new sand story. Join us for this final performance and live conversation in the Broadband Collaborative's Latitude series.
Very simple, right? But I think what I love about that little piece is that it's actually a promotional piece, but it was a way to get some funds, and it was a way to share funds through an artist across 2 projects. And that is not something we had ever thought about doing. We wouldn't have done it if we weren't doing this virtual piece and we weren't in crisis. So that was kind of a creative way to think about it. And now there's conversations between, you know, young audiences and broadband, what Guy could do. And so I think that's a great example. And I think I have one more, and I think it's an Arlequin. I just wanted to end with one more video, and then I thought somebody had their hand up, and I have a couple of thoughts at the end. But because I'm working so closely with Arlequin, I hope you'll forgive me for sharing a second piece of theirs. But in that virtual theater lab, there's a piece being made called Chekhov OS, which is virtual and live at the same time inside a video game. It's very new and it's very innovative, and it's sort of really different than anything that's been seen before. And I've been thinking about, you know, Susan Nelson from TDC once gave a workshop that I took. I've learned so much from Susan over the years. And she was talking about capitalization of organizations. And she had done a study through TDC of nonprofits after financial downturns, and who survived and who did not, and who thrived and who did not. And one of the things that she reported was that organizations that did new artistic work or that took artistic risks actually did better in the long run. And it's surprising, right? Because you think like, okay, no, we need to do Midsummer Night's Dream, or okay, no, we need to do like the piece of music that everybody loves for the cash. And, you know, and if some of that is true, but there was a way that when things are dark and difficult, if somebody comes and inspires you with a new idea or is really pushing for something exciting, you can start to see a future. And I do think that that's a really smart fundraising tool, especially in this moment. And so how are you positioned, if that's what you do, or if there's a piece of that what you do, how are you positioning yourself that way right now? And we've been able to, for this Chekhov project, and I'll show you the trailer in a second, but we've been able to go back to existing funders who give the same amount every year and say, you know what, we're onto something. We're onto something. This is what's happening during COVID. It's a new moment. We need investment. Will you come in? And they came in with a gift that was like 4 times what they normally give because they were inspired and excited. So I think that's just another thing to think about. Let's watch that clip, Justin, and then we'll just do a little wrap up and talk about a few things and do some questions or comments.
You are now inside the Chekhov OS.
В голове пьеса уже готова. Называется «Вишневый сад».
Your cherry orchard is to be sold to pay off your debts. The sale is fixed for August 22nd.
Приготовились? Снимай!
I think it'll all come to nothing. Nothing. He's a busy man. He pays no attention to me.
The present is disgusting. But when I think about the future, oh, so good.
Is the cherry orchard sold?
It's sold. Вышла у меня не драма из пьесы, а скорее комедия, местами даже фарс.
They've forgotten about me.
Life in this house is finished now.
Yes. Life in this house is no more.
Darling, what is it? You have tears in your eyes.
It's nothing, Mother.
So that's something new, and that is none of the traditional foundations can fund it right now, but there's an approach around this virtual piece, which is there are folks who are excited about something new and being inspired by something new. Justin, can you go back to slide 5 for a second? Because that's what I think I want to just review now at the end here. Yeah, no, there. So I guess this was a lot of stuff to share, but I think what I've been thinking about in terms of virtual fundraising is that messaging is really important. Understanding why people give money to you and how to connect your messaging with them in the right way, whether it's a foundation, an individual, you know, like it's an event, it's corporate, it's government, any of those things. How are you connecting these things with them? And then activating circles of people to help you. And all of these messages here on this sheet, we are with you, we're here for you. Help us, we're in an emergency. Look how we're leading and responding. Look, we're stepping back, we're supporting others who are leading. We're here to stay, our work matters. It always matters. We're gonna provide joy and escape for you, or we are innovating and doing something new. Imagine a future with us. Those are all different strategies depending on what you are, what your organization or piece of art or project is. And I think a little bit of mapping of these kinds of messages to your purpose, to the external scan, and to what other funders are doing and caring about right now might give some new direction and some new strategy for fundraising in the digital time. And then Justin, you can zip to the end. I think the question I have for all of you is like, what's going to stay with us? And what did we learn and what's going to stay with us? So I think you can go down to the bottom one. I think that there is a lot that we've learned, and the democratization of things like everyone can gather for free, or the diversity of audiences when you can have people from everywhere, the ability, like Heather was saying, to have political officials or artists from celebrities to come into your event and have it feel real, the opportunity to connect. All of these are things we can keep doing and hopefully will keep doing even as we reopen some things and do things in person. It might save us a lot of money in event costs. It might put people in the room together who wouldn't be together at $100 dinner. It might put people in the room together who just live 600 miles apart. And for me, the thing has been learn how to edit, get on a streaming service like StreamYard, figure out how it works, try cross-streaming something on Facebook, ask someone to help you. I am not technical. I cannot make the coffee in my house. I can't work the remote. But this year I figured out all this stuff with a lot of help from people like Justin and webinars. And I do think there's a future for us in virtual fundraising. So that's basically what I had to say. I hope it was helpful and useful. I would love to have comments or questions. I saw Gabriel had his hand up. I don't know if that was for real, but you can certainly put something in the chat. If there are any comments or questions, and I'll give a second for that. And if there aren't, I know Michael has a question for me. Okay, so if you have things you want to say, you can put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to ask Michael if there's anything. You're a fundraiser and have different experience than I do. Is there anything you want to comment on or ask or say as we wrap this up? And maybe Justin, we can take the slides down.
I'd actually more say some of the stories that I've heard from some of our grantees at Mass Cultural Council who tried to put together virtual fundraising galas or major gift solicitations, or just a way to remain relevant with their donors, their existing donors. And I think the trouble is everybody did it all at once to varying degrees of sophistication and success. Mm-hmm. And so it may have turned off some folks. And of course, a lot of organizations were all doing it. Looking ahead to when we're returning and we're going to still carrying over some of these things, the competition for the online fundraising is hopefully not going to be as strong. And therefore, folks can actually carve out some time within the organization to really devote to that space. I think a lot of feedback was like, everybody's doing online galas. I'm just galled out and I'm Zoomed out and I'm virtualed out and all this stuff. And I just want to see people again. So it really is that mix between how do you show your mission and showcase that to as many people as possible. And so there's going to be a mix on that. It's trying to figure out, is that a 30-70 split? Is that a half and half? Or are we always going to do in person and there'll be a live component along, a virtual component along with that? And just figuring out what a post-COVID world looks like when it comes to this, taking some of those innovations that have been developed and not throwing it away, because we see some things actually did work. We connected with people who might be in Florida or might be in other places that they would have, you know, kind of gone off the radar at a certain point. They wouldn't have been able to come to concerts or programs or productions, but they were able to stay connected, at least on the programmatic side of the organization, because of this. So how do we retain that? Which of course then translates to fundraising.
I mean, that's such a good point, especially when everybody was doing it at once. I guess I think that there has to be a really good reason why you're doing it, you know, and then and the other thing is thinking about length. I mean, it is possible to do a 20-minute gathering and just get in touch with people and say, can you come into the room? I went to the Arts Emerson. They did like an online gala thing. And when they had all the artists they were working with came to a little thing first, like 15 minutes. And then they put you in room with donors for like 15 minutes. And then they had art. Some people only could come for one of those segments. They put in an appearance, but they gave, right? And so I think there's something there too, like the gala, you may want to have a big gala and see people in person, but that doesn't mean you can't say, you know, the anniversary of our company is on October 6th. And that Friday night from 6 to 6:30, can you all come and bring, it's 6 people, and let's just do a toast. And I think, you know, and everybody give $20 or everybody give $100 or whatever it is. And I think there's a way in which that kind of gathering, I'm busy, I'll show up for that, especially if all my people are there, and like, I'll do that and make my donation. It's actually great. I don't have to park. I don't have to drive. There's no babysitter. Like, that's awesome. So I do think there's a way to think in the mix of things about what will, and then, you know, maybe you can get the celebrity in the room from Florida or a past employee who's living somewhere else. So to me, that part's interesting. I also think using art that works in the virtual space as part of your event is also a thing. Like I've showed those Arlequin pieces partly because they're actually wanting to make stuff virtually, like for the next many years. And so our guy who did those sand paintings, that's work that works this way. And so there's a place for it. And those are 2 thoughts.
Yeah. I also say, you know, the technology for folks that haven't done this, it was kind of medieval before this. I mean, there were some platforms that were helpful for this. Obviously, the crowdfunding and a few others have been around for a while, but a way to create an event, a fundraising event online and make it interactive and kind of to bring in that same culture that you would have at an in-person event really wasn't there in many ways. And so if you haven't done it, see where that has really progressed in the last year. As you said, we've innovated like crazy. And now there are platforms, I think people mentioned Canva, you talked about that, maybe a couple others too, where it's actually, I don't want to say it's drag and drop because that, you know, it still requires some, you know, work on that, but it's not as difficult as it might have been before.
That's right. And we've actually broadband, we've used StreamYard a lot. And I know there are other streaming services, but I do just want to tell people that what you can do on a streaming, you subscribe, you pay a monthly fee, you can go in and take a couple tutorials. You can show videos and then cut back to live, and then show a video and then cut back to live, and it all streams to YouTube or it all streams to Facebook. So people are watching it, but it's a mix of live and you can just do it straight through StreamYard. And it's really, that creates a really wonderful opportunity. They also have features like if people put something in the chat, it'll pop up on the screen on StreamYard, everybody can see it. So there's just some fun things like that. And you don't even have to, you can just go look at some videos and see if you want to try something. You know, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to become a professional editor or, you know, there's some really great tools now. Yeah, for sure.
And in many cases, these can be recorded and shared for after. So, you know, if you miss the gala, you miss the gala at a time, so you can only hear about it. But here, there could be a way, even if you couldn't attend it, you know, virtually, that you can still share it, still use it as it goes along. And you mentioned the virtual tip jar. You mentioned a lot of the different vehicles to actually collect, you know, the mechanism of collecting funds from that. Not to forget that too.
Oh, yeah, and you can take that video, you can take that hour-long video, and you can edit a 3-minute version and send it to everybody and say, here's the highlights, here's what you missed, here's what it felt like. You're still part of it. Donate. Yeah. So I do think there's a lot of benefit to keeping some pieces of it going. Yeah. Anything else? Are we ready to wrap?
I haven't seen any questions come in while we were bantering. So First of all, I'd love to say thank you to everyone who attended the webinar today. You know, taking out an hour and 20 minutes of your day is not easy at all, particularly those of you who are grantees of Mass Cultural Council. I know there's a lot of reporting going on right now, so thank you for doing that. And then also thank you to Justin and Sarah. You know, they've delivered 3 webinars for us during this season, and I just want to say thank you so much for your expertise and your energy and your knowledge that you share with everybody. For everyone here, this recording will be made available, and I will email you that tomorrow when it's available, and you can share that out. But other than that, thank you to everyone here, and have a great rest of your week, and happy Memorial Day.
I'm just going to put my email in the chat too, because if people want to talk or have questions or comments, feel free to reach out.
And you were saying, Sarah, that actually after the other sessions, people did reach out to you and ask maybe more individualized questions, or maybe questions that they didn't want to ask publicly.
Yeah, and I had some coffee dates afterwards with people, because like we're all trying to figure this out together. So the more we network and connect, so feel free to reach out if that's useful. And thank you for taking the time to listen today. Appreciate it. And thank you, Justin.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week. Bye.
Thank you, Mass Cultural Council, for all you do for all of us.
We're here.